Okay, I just want to start off this video by saying whether you like Xbox or like PlayStation, or maybe you're like me and you love video games in general and you like them all, I think one thing we can agree on is that Xbox and PlayStation both know how to create some hype. Welcome all fellow wannabes, welcome to the channel. I am Gabriel Fast and I do claim to be the Wannabe Critic. Today I'm diving into a subject that's been on my mind basically since, I don't know, probably since last generation. You know, the so-called console wars. We always have this, this idea of the console war and like which console is better and which console, which console has the best features and yada yada yada. And it really comes down to like the minutia of what both of these machines can do, and really the toxicity around the fandoms, and the fans rather around both systems kind of going head to head. Well, just know that this video for me, or this podcast if you're a podcast listener, I speak from an unbiased standpoint because I own both systems. I play games on both systems. I enjoy both systems for different reasons. But I can identify kind of where the strengths and weaknesses are in both, and really kind of how each brand really excels with its marketing and really excels in what it's trying to accomplish. And I'd like to say, it might seem like I'm a little less on the Xbox side. I play my Xbox way less. I still like Xbox. I play all my third-party stuff, and I play the majority of my first-party titles on PlayStation. And, I do have an Xbox for the first-party titles as well, but I play my PlayStation more. So if I seem like I'm commending Xbox less or mentioning them less, I am, because I have more to say about PlayStation. The fact of the matter is that both of these companies are setting us up for success as gamers. They're driving competition. They're making it almost impossible to not enjoy being a gamer. There was kind of a really weird time back, in the PS4 and Xbox One days where it was kind of a different conversation. But now more than ever, it feels like both of these brands are kind of going in different directions. So let's kind of talk about that. What is the difference between PlayStation hype and Xbox hype? As I mentioned before, Sony is really at this point on track with the PlayStation brand to continue their success. Xbox is really only helping and trying to force Sony's hand and kind of speed up their plans in some ways to get some things out. We're going to read some articles here in a minute to kind of back that up. I kind of wanted to start with Sony first and just kind of, talk about where Sony really excels. I think us as Sony's fans, we can agree that Sony really excels in selling you a first-party, single-player experience that's going to have the perfect marketing around it and is going to find its designated audience, as well as just being a banger of a game all the time. Take Returnal, for instance, that just came out. Ratchet & Clank is coming out soon. There hasn't been any shortage of marketing for its biggest titles, and titles that it's kind of willing to take risks on as well. I think we can objectively say that Sony creates successful hits in video games. They sell you this idea of you must play this game. You have to play this game. The execution and the marketing is at the forefront, and it makes it a really difficult 1-2 punch to avoid as a gamer. Even someone who has an Xbox. If you're an Xbot / Xbox fan that isn't interested in Ratchet and Clank and can't acknowledge the fact that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart looks amazing, then you're just not a reasonable person. I wanted to kind of talk about why Sony is going to succeed in continuing to create hype in the similar fashion as to what it did back on the PS4 and really kind of has always done. With that same marketing strategy, there's a couple of things even within the world that is kind of playing into its favor. This write-up comes from IGN. If you want to go check it out, you can go check out the entire thing. I'll list it in the description down below. But this is in relation to the shortage of game consoles. Previously, Sony had said that we shouldn't have any problems buying PlayStation 5s, by the end of 2020 or by the end of 2021, but now it's looking like it's probably going to set into 2022. The write-up from IGN says, ever since the PS5 launched in November 2020, it has been difficult for both retail stores and consumers to get their hands on one. Both the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the trade war started by the Trump administration against China have affected the ability for electronics manufacturers to get a hold of these parts. It was previously reported that AMD, which produces chips for the PS5, expected shortages to continue into 2021, but that looks set to be extended into 2022 as well. Sony has previously been vocal in suggesting it wants to surpass the second-year sales of the PS4, which totaled 14.8 million units. However, issues with the particular chips needed might get in the way of achieving that target. Ideally, Sony would want to keep up with or even exceed the early sales of the PlayStation 4, but that is looking increasingly challenging at this point. Which is worth noting at this point in time, during the launch window, PlayStation 5 has actually outsold PlayStation 4 whenever PlayStation 4 had been in the same launch window. Just wanted to throw that out there for a second. So there's a shortage of parts for these consoles, which inherently creates a demand that isn't there. You know, retail stores aren't even able to get their hands on these consoles in mass quantities, let alone consumers. It's even harder for consumers to get their hands on them. Industry professionals are having a hard time finding, you know, a PlayStation 5 to be able to play games on, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. So that being said, we have a demand created because, you know, there's a huge shortage. Pairing this with a Wired article that just came out today as of May 12th, it says this: the PlayStation 5 is starting to look like the revolution it promised. I'm just going to read an excerpt here as well. It says, according to Herman Holst, a Guerrilla co-founder whom Jim Ryan tapped to lead PlayStation Studios in 2019, the group has more than 25 titles in development for the PS5, nearly half of which are entirely new IP. There's an incredible amount of variety originating from different regions, Holst says. Big, small, different genres, and in many of those cases, Sony's shared services became a lifeline for studios navigating lockdown. Just from those two, we have kind of, yet again, another 1-2 punch, you know, with what's going on for the PlayStation 5. And, you know, again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, you know, executing the marketing along with having new things to sell. 25 titles, half of which are new IP. That's a lot of games to ship. That's a lot of games to work on. Whenever you have the demand combined with something to sell to supplement the sales, and you have a history, at least for the past 7 or 8 years at this point, of being able to ship a banger experience almost every single time, that's going to generate a lot of hype from all kinds of different angles. Whether you have a PS5 already, whether you're looking to get a PS5, whether you're just an enthusiast, I mean, that's exciting news to know that there's 25 games in development currently of all shapes, sizes, and colors for the PlayStation 5. That's just exciting. On the other side, with Microsoft, with the Xbox, it's a completely different situation, and here's why. There's still a demand, and there's still a lot of consoles that are missing from people's homes right now because they're not able to get their hands on one. I would say it's just as hard to find an Xbox Series X as it is to find a PlayStation 5, and, you know, there's still a huge audience rallying behind the Xbox community as well. Xbox doesn't need hype from all these different exterior sources or really, you know, it doesn't even have to factor in the fact that there's a demand for there to be hype because of one simple reason. And that one simple reason is that Xbox has Game Pass. Xbox continues to have a banger lineup, titles lined up for Xbox Game Pass that are coming out all the time. They're spending more and more money. If anyone has the capital to invest into something like this, it's Microsoft. They don't have anything to lose. They're still in a rebuilding period. It wasn't that long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that we were like, oh, the Netflix of games, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to pan out. Yet here it is. Xbox is absolutely killing it. They bought Bethesda Softworks. I mean, Bethesda has a slew of games that are now technically, you know, they're owned by Xbox. New IP coming out in the future, probably going to be Xbox exclusive. I've heard there's rumblings of deals with certain games here and there, but still, I mean, you have so many things at your disposal and so many bullets in the chamber if you're Xbox because of Game Pass. We kind of joke and say, like, Xbox has just basically turned into the Game Pass machine. That's why I have mine. I have Game Pass for PC as well, and I feel like the best value is going to be able to be supplemented with an Xbox as well as having it on PC. There is a downside. There are, right as of this moment, there are less first-party titles that Xbox has produced. Xbox has not produced as many good experiences as PlayStation has. They just haven't. It's almost 2-to-1 in terms of how many games have come out, you know, especially with this generation currently and the last generation. But the idea that there's all of these games coming from all of these studios that we know, you know, 343, the Coalition, you have Ninja Theory. You have the various Bethesda properties. You have all of these different companies making games for Xbox. The only difference between Sony and Microsoft whenever it comes to having, Sony has 25 titles in the can, ready to go. Xbox has how many titles? We don't know. That's the biggest problem with Xbox. That's the biggest difference. And we still don't know with PlayStation. We can probably be more confident that PlayStation is going to deliver on what they promise because they have a history of doing so. Whereas Xbox has kind of been backed into a corner and they say, oh, we have all these studios and all these games, yet we have no roadmap and no schedule for many of them. The biggest thing that Xbox has going for it right now, as of this moment in time, is current titles that are existing, as well as Halo Infinite coming out soon, which is really the only thing to look forward to at this point. And I guess, Stalker 2 and some other things like that. We've seen a lot of, fluff. We've seen a lot of teaser trailers for a lot of these things that are coming out, yet we haven't seen any gameplay for any of it. Whereas when PlayStation announces something, a lot of times there is a teaser, like something like God of War, right? But they're usually pretty quick to roll out something because they're focusing on one game at a time. You wouldn't place a lot of marketing around Returnal because that's somewhat of a risk. There has still been marketing around it, but they knew it was going to sell because it's a PlayStation 5 launch title. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. They're focusing a majority of their efforts on making that game look as good as it can, getting it the limelight that it needs, putting it out in front of people, doing behind closed doors events, doing all these things. And people are excited. That's the difference. Influencers are excited. Reviewers are excited. People are excited to see what's going to happen. Whereas on the Xbox side, it's kind of, I could see where people would be like, I've been burned too many times, by Xbox at this point. Like, I'm hopeful, but I'm not getting my hopes up, if that makes sense. It doesn't change the fact, though, that Xbox has so many titles at their disposal and so many titles that are going to be available for Game Pass day one that's just a value that's insane that no competitor is going to touch. PlayStation can't do that. They're not going to do that. There's no need for them to do that, really. But even if there was, they probably still wouldn't do that. Microsoft is happy to lose money on Game Pass, which they are losing money on Game Pass, if you think about it, to bring a wide slew of people in and get people subscribed to Game Pass, because in the end, that is the long game. That is the big investment at this point, is to spend all this money to get people invested in the Netflix of games, because that's what Game Pass is going to be eventually. Here's the deal. Each company excels at different things, and trying to compare, and ask the question, like, which one is better, it's silly at this point. Because they're both going to kill with their strategy, and both are going to make a bajillion dollars. And no matter what, for us as gamers, it's a good thing, because no matter what these companies do decide to do with their different strategies, is going to create competition between the two of them to give us the best gaming experiences for our box of choice, or if we have both boxes, to get the best gaming experience that we can out of both of them. While they're competing for revenue gains, we're getting amazing video games. So at this point, whether you claim to be an Xbot or a Sony pony, or whether you're calling someone, you're going back and forth and you're doing the console war thing, at this point, it's just gotten old. You look stupid. Like, just stop. There's not really any need for it. Just enjoy what you want to enjoy. Like, have fun, play the games that you want to play. And if you can afford to buy both consoles, you should, because both will have amazing experiences that I know you will get the most out of. Whew. Okay, that's all I had to say. That was the video I wanted to put out. If you like this type of video and you want to see more of this type of stuff, or if you're a podcast listener, if you like to see this type of stuff and you'd like to see me kind of give my thoughts on it, make sure you let me know down in the comments below, or you can email me at geeklybiweekly1@gmail.com. There's a variety of ways to get in touch with me. All you got to do is go to, type in the Wannabe Critic on any social platform of choice, and I'll probably be there, except MySpace. But that's going to wrap it up for me today. I really, really appreciate your time if you've made it all the way through. And before I go, check this out. Whatever possessed you to check out the podcast or the YouTube channel today, I just want to say thank you so much for doing so. If this is your first time here, I would appreciate it, if you would consider subscribing. As you can tell, it's not just me here anymore. I mean, I do stuff by myself, but the podcast is going to reside here from now on, in video form. So if you want to see more content, if you want to be notified, every time we post something, whether it be a clip, a podcast, a review, an interview, whatever it may be, if it's gaming stuff, make sure you click that bell and hit the subscribe button, and we will see you next time. Thanks for sticking around, and thank you for preparing yourselves for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be the Wannabe Critic.